Hello, America. I have read from the nature of English itself, the rules of English grammar, and they are distinctly, non distinctly, and simultaneously the same, but also other than is afforded a quality of reception by what we know. There are proofs for example, alphabet. See alpha in the root of the word as the root of the word alphabet. See how it could also be bet, which is um, could be a wager, non-monetary, no, too, but relevant to where A stands for alpha, and so where alpha exists, so does omega, and relevant to where and how. With yin yang could never part. One way as where and how we are a species body of volume. It is one volume science simultaneously, distinctly, non distinctly, and hyper simultaneously. From where and from how we are individual as a distinct, simultaneous relevance as this body of species. Well, not. We are three, so we're in groups. So know how we have no control over the groups treatments of finite. We have no control over the species treatment of finite. Where and how we use its words like humanity. Know how. See, everyone misses the value and the significance as criminal and serious natures of positive treatments, negative treatments, identity treatments simultaneously. For example, where and how victims slash hyper victims have only been seen where and how the sciences are manifest, with where and how actually came to be, naming humanities plural. Where it should be the science of humanity, not per opinion, but to a whole list of proofs that show not only the simultaneous, consciously exploited, but with that, where you discern the identity of the simultaneous. Being light bulb is by having the finite, but also where and how lies or non-lies are still with the visible but still discernible, or the physical but still discernible. See, that is distinct from hypervisible but still discernible, which comes with all the parts of English grammar, which are the invisible but still discernible. They come with an extent of hyper invisible but still discernible. But where and how everyone is an extent of that one identity that is everything at once, that has been, that is now, and that will come. We are distinctly it, well, not it, and the juxtaposition, where and how more and more forever nature is being made. And this is really how English had been revealed in ancient times, before sciences had become tactically, criminally foreign influenced in some ancient times. Per, reason, per reasons known, but everyone didn't fathom how juxtaposed with those reasons apparent were fake ones involved with everyone's really what affected the fact sheet natures of everyone involved. A breaching method is most probable and discernible to, we are capable of discerning it consciously affected without anyone realizing countries, the names of humanity's locations, individually grouped in together to defend themselves while simultaneously, without realizing, defending qualities of fact keeping nature, aspects of it, timing of that, where that couldn't be defended, and themselves individually grouped or together at all locations from the method slash S of and nature of, you know, a method by criminal insidiousness. I'm not a lawyer. Criminal insidiousness is an identity of the ground, identity of relationship to itself, that all formal forms of logic speaking for the identity of law, no matter who you are, if you're a lawyer or not, originally and still. What was sustained when they were sustaining this against before they just sustained, there's an old that and how a there's a what's his name, a professor of mine. You know, there was professors and teachers I had who have a pattern of having been influenced as victims slash hyper victims, as sense and sensibilities, to use Jane Austen's phrase, as nervous system, to use the scientific phrase. I'm not a doctor. We know originally still that doctors had recorded relevant, not just physical delusions. You know, they have physical delusions, nature delusions, and identity delusions. And nature is discernible as a relativity to positive and negative simultaneously. So we're restricted to physics. We're restricted to physics, the math associated with the locations of computer screens, of video screens. That left and leave out, all campuses left and leave out that conjunctive to where and how we are actually syntactically manifest. It's better than perfect to call it where and how we are hyper native, for example. And it is where and how too, it is only increasingly valued to be able to discern where and how humanity has been most probably and demonstrably too, so taking self-value roles with sciences and as sciences about other and as other per where and how we are actually individuals, grouped in species body of volume slash S, three distinct sciences that are being generated by the one they share. Where and how it is 1/3/5 distinct identities of sequence slash simultaneous nature. For example, that which is also some things constantly, and it is some things variably. But where it is things variably, that also comes with the phenomenon, with the phenomenon of Earth's special difference, being the same one as our own, but distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously, but also hyper-simultaneously, which is hyper-invisible, but still discernible. But that's relative to where and to how. the real means to cause evolution's fruits and gifts means out of nowhere, and positive value nature progressions, acts, natures everywhere at once, or to cause negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, and means and causes everywhere at once. You know, the breaching a breaching method itself caused took over formal conceptions, formal groundings of the identity of value/value progression that distinctly, but also non-distinctly, is that one coming through the wires where electrical engineering has described an atom, an atom being a nucleus, grouped cell protons and neutrons, and identity of relationship to itself, where the only increasing value, positive or negative or neutral, is relevant to its identity of relationship to what is described through theory/science, and vice versa, with the simultaneously, sequentially. For example, too, the same way the human mind reads the invisible but still discernible, hypervisible but still discernible with this. So A, for example, is and it's named the alphabet. That's one proof that A stands for alpha. In other words, just like with distinctly, non-distinctly, simultaneously, and also hyper simultaneously from how, as how, well, as how Greek, the Greek alphabet reportedly has words that each letter spelled out. Each letter of the English language, demonstrably, reading the rules from the nature itself, and simultaneous relativity, and the simultaneous relativity of relevant evidences, and this includes their identity of relationship to our nature as volume science too, where the significance of it denied by opinionators or not. That also is with evidences. See, but we are prevented this quality of fact treatment nature offensively per where and how we have to address differential criminal foreign influences. I'm not police form, not criminal, not a lawyer. Remember, lawyers too, we have means to observe with what we know is true always, not denying any exceptions, not denying the value of nature mistreatments. For example, as it rolls with arrays, blaming on other things, others, ourselves. Since founding, and since before founding, what the breaching method caused and exploited worst, as rolls with everyone's uses of all natures of positive treatments, negative treatments, and identity treatments. Wherever there's a positive treatment, there's a negative treatment conjunctive to it. Wherever there is a positive or negative treatment discernible, there is an identity treatment discernible. Wherever that is discernible, the value of sequence, what really unfolded before every instance, is increasingly identity of value with that. Well, as it distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. And the identity of what is to come is simultaneously value too. Relative to where and how these five identities of sequence/simultaneous nature. were out of bounds and grouped 1/3/5. This is an identity of conjunction greater than infinity and more finite than infinity. All parts of it. All parts of it, any identity ever having been generated of any, excuse me, nature of identity. And note with all distinct forms of life, cell body, cell nucleus, cell wall, the body of value coming through it, not just oxygen, not just water, not just the gases and the elements with the water, but identity is coming through. Not just our identities, not just the identities of our species body, not just the identity of the species all at once, as Earth's a special difference too, again. Inseparably hyperconjunctive, where how as also we are only temporary positive here automatically. And we stay when we stay per its system hypernative. We know the hypernative system. What's the proper summary of American history? Proper summary, if you know how it's going to unfold. So you explain the breaching method that took complete hyperpossession slash possession over quality aspects in nature, therefore qualities, aspects in natures increasingly of syntactically how the countries that were involved with the colonization of each location, not just with the colonization of it, it came from semi-ancient times with roles with the worst uses from off all locations, of all locations. This breaching method knew that the phenomenon that would be semi-ancient nations and or the phenomena of modern countries, it knew effectively that by the time they unraveled enough the crazy laws against everyone about what they said and what they didn't say about what everyone and them, the people next to them, about themselves and the people next to them. It had employed uses of nature, words like innocence or guilt, but to roles with all natures, distinct natures of criminal insidiousness that were collusions with that even worse one. But it was also through the three branches of government and exception nature tied to them. And it sustained that effectively to have all identity ground voices, identities individually grouped and together, where it is demonstrated how it actually unfolded in the past, the relevance of sequence truth, where it would be and is manifest, where how we go about our days as a value/value progression, exactly the way what computers have to mimic. All exceptions where they can do things better, they're increasingly in demonstration of that not being true. And the debates about it are increasingly incapable of the identity speaking for the law, no matter if they're formal law or not, of defending their logic and not affording being and having been used remotely, time treatments at interbranch locations, for example, where they were recorded standing psychopaths in collusion with areas of criminal enterprises, private ones, and roles with uses of that certain type of victim slash hyper victim to the logic of people A through Z, and in the defenses of themselves, relevant also to where and to how applied was where and how people speak through each other. Or did you hear this and something like that? They applied each age of fact human nature to little magic tricks. We know how easy it is to do right with just a magician in front of the stage. Magic tricks. We never dealt with all kinds of magic tricks, motivation, nature, needs, interest, and all that used remotely, and counters to what that would cause. That breaching method had everyone blame other things, others, or ourselves, and then defend that, obviously. So styles of logic and syntactical possessions, tactical ulterior from that hyper possession that is true always. Short words have means to use what is true always, not denying the slightest exception, not valuing the slightest exception being denied, not valuing roles with debates and syntactically manifest phenomena tied to the relevance of exception. Because, in other words, this has the foreign and domestic here and there, everywhere the species volume is. For example, it is proofs that they have all this time to speak and be other than we know it so many ways at once, individually, groups, and all together. Fake integrity as that needed parent voice to speak for relevant to where and how wars are solutions, while simultaneously recorded. Inseparable from this is that and how from here across the globe, since before our founding country, the founders of our country, our founder parents, were even conceived, there was already a breaching method entrenched too deep, already too long, in defenses of people's selves, wherever their motivations too had been employed, other than the breaching methods, but with itself knowing that it would have to hide through all kinds of motivations, natures, needs, interests, other than its own. But time kept needing to hide the same sequence of finite acts of progressive life. Uses of insidiousness, natures of positive treatments, negative treatments, and identity treatments. For example, the identity of justice, the identity, and simultaneously the identity of morality. There's a certain kind of victim that since you all were kids in every country, other things and or other /s and or selves were blamed, even when correctly, were blamed for the real causes of the worst negative value, nature, progressions, acts, and natures. And roles with motivations. You know the words. You guys never thought it was weird how they still have talks about hate groups, and then they'll put them on and have them speak with each other with these fake sides. That the breaching method we all know forced, but they're entertaining it. And they're entertaining counters to it exactly the way the breaching method also employed. It knew that everyone would want and need to get the heck out of those breaching method laws, but it was everyone tied to everyone. Every hypernatural difference, the way we are actually manifest, every difference was employed other before and then while distinctly, but also not just the deployments we know, where identity ground, identity of roles, with those crazy laws against everyone sickly distinctly that colonization contained. Not one has trained. Treatments of colonization too, counters against the formal. They have stayed in collusion with over areas, locations, overt criminal enterprises, and private ones. That is discernible, but where and how their logic and the defenses of their own identities, therefore names and uses of other people's, were relevant, and to where and to how the hyper evidential has been forbid for its free speech while people are pretending to be able to speak for free speech. You have not heard it. You have heard a psychopath. In other words, when they want to have calmness in courts, they've been planting evidences with these crime methods, saying, doing whatever at locations, roles with wire crimes, roles with names tied to body dumping spots, child offenders on the registry. There are people on YouTube and on Facebook with as police forms that have been pretending I'm on the child offender registry. It's a federal crime to impersonate a police officer. It's even worse to spread lies through time between different social media. They're lying about their motivations too, because because that's one of the things recorded. But you have to look what's actually recorded, and you have to value the sequence shifts. They have people of each age saying things of anger on and or hateful, consciously, knowingly, but only to an extent, but hiding that. The people pretending to be against hate. All they're doing is keeping people shock and awe, incapable of countering where there are criminally foreign influenced delusions, wrought uses of people speaking for the law and how to counter negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, making it collusion with uses of names at all locations formal, having stayed, not like everyone, not wanting to be criminally foreign influenced, but having stayed differentially criminally foreign influenced. That self-value, where and how it is relevant and discernible, where and how we have the course of Black pupils, whites of eyes abridged. This comes, that is the course of Black pupils and the whites of eyes is abridged. That one sentence is increasingly valuable because it is a truth that is true always, not denying the slightest exception, not valuing to have the slightest exception denied. And it doesn't have one delusion associated with it. We are not free at last. Begin this class, boxings, teach us things. The square, or the rectangle, or the triangle, or the circle, they cannot make more of the volume that is shape unless they stay increasingly positive to themselves, or their volume /S is forced away from here, leaf of IDs. Prepare, ye legion, hear your name again, retold. In the campus names, return. We gain this forth with ease. Campus Mars Corpus calls us to the breeze. The ancient way. Humanity pray. Many times I hear asked, people speak about why we have the calendar, why we have the, why do we have the shortened hours? of the day, because the day gets shorter. Who invented it? It was revealed by sciences that valued difference as a mean physical, the appearance of difference as a means to discern, as they did, how one identity of volume is distinctly five distinct identities of sequence nature. And so manifest are the increasing value of the volume. They are distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously the cells, cell body, cell nucleus, cell wall, and know how the cell walls are shared. And so the body of value discern that there is a identity of relativity, and there is an identity of hyper-relativity that has a semi-nature relationship to, as the distinct identities of our body, each individual body, its parts individually grouped and individual grouped and together. In other words, the ways they are grouped together, they have a semi-nature relationship to the complete identity. And it's complete, distinctly, non-distinctly further to and as that, which has all exception, nature, and demonstration to us increasingly of the value of understanding how and why it is one identity of sequence nature, one way. And how it is multiple ways, distinctly, non-distinctly, and hyper simultaneously. And this comes with the value of Earth's special difference with NASDAQ, which is actually being and having been speaking for and as the actual capabilities of the mind, identity. Because don't forget, even though we're only a little piece of that which is everything at once, its complete identity relationship to itself that is only increasing where it is also positive to itself. That is only increasingly valuable here, automatically, increasingly present, and or forced away from here, though, where and how it is we are directed to discern all physical values, all identity values, all metaphysical values, as nature is to be read. So M is the middle letter of the 13th letter of the 26th letters of the English alphabet. M stands for mother. So A stands for alpha, and M stands for mother. And note how L comes right before it. These are two connected, distinct identities of longing. L through M and L through W, or L through O. But it is also constantly increasingly valuable, whereas distinctly, but non-distinctly, and hyper-simultaneously, A through Z, relevant to where and to how yin-yang can never part. They are distinctly they are hyper-additional too, while as each other, yin-yang and alpha and omega, and where and how the humanity's volume is inseparable and only increasing where value is nature as value, hyper invisible, as value that is conjunctive to and as the body of evolution's fruits and gifts here, or as them forced from here, these of Hadiths, But this again is through a scientific treatment of positive and negative treatments, identity treatments that does not leave out the slightest finite detail, does not value them being or having been left out, does not value lawyers and interbranch with a whole bunch of other countries and overt criminal enterprises and private ones and uses of insidiousness of people A through Z per uses of all locations, originally and still, where and how it is relevant, how they got away with being in, pretending to be able to speak for any country that has roles with war after all this time, and they still haven't spoken for how we're in tactically denatured suburbs, let alone the cities, where all our means are recorded, self-valued, and other pretended, as styles of logic that could be demonstrated, that's evident. All kinds of revelations are being generated by nature itself, demonstrating to us the value of understanding where and how, since before our founding parents were even born, in Russia and in America, in Ukraine, in China. We're in a semi-ancient trap that knew that the people that would speak for the law would need to counter things like criminal insidiousness, natures of positive and negative treatments, by and as the value of the people in all locations, areas, and states, relative to all kind of things demonstrating that and how humanity was self-valued, individually grouped and together, tactical terror, syntactically, from where and how we are supposed to be, and we're supposed to be. And so where and how formal natures really can't speak for positive and negative. They can't afford defenses of how there were means really and our means really to interpret what they already said. Boxing is read, then said till song. Boxings. It teaches things. The sciences share an identity. It is more probable that boxing, martial arts, and wrestling were conceived to a shared identity of the ground function relative to that and to how the republic for which we stand, and exceptions in exception nature, tied to where, and to how originally nature revealed before the sciences became criminally foreign influenced. The value of each other's names. It's a difference between each other's voices. Representatives of the volume. And because they're preventing any individual from speaking for the finite. When political leaders fight with themselves, and there are exceptions to themselves in their parties, too, they're only capable of speaking for those exceptions, and or for exception nature as criminal insidiousness natures, per a method of abuse of three ages of correlation nature, simultaneously, sickly, distinctly, to keep how sickly, not distinctly, consciously from being discerned. Not one has learned. Boxings. I teach you things, but long. Call through the sky. You're home. Come home. Romulus is home. Romulus comes home. Travels through the sky like now. Be gone. Be gone. It's nice to have them. So in other words, America. And so in other words, we have all kinds of things we could stop right away, instantly. And this is going to make all kinds of other problems that are going to be sensed before we're done, even though it can happen real fast. Because everything, because of this relevant filter, everything comes through. Relevant to where and to how computers work, for example, too. Relevant to where and to how, as evidence. The experts on each science came through and relative with identity ground, relative, even if they, not from the sciences. And even if they're from another country, whatever like that, because they're shared here and there in the ways they don't speak about. There are demonstrably a whole bunch of reasons that they would be forced not to speak about these relationships. But that's one of the things effectively used to get people effectively to communicate other than they communicate and other than they say, while simultaneously pretending other and getting away with it relevant to uses of a phenomenon called differentially criminally foreign influenced and self-value uses of it simultaneous. And because there is a simultaneous use of that, singular, but it effectively maintains self-cultivated, needs fulfilled and means fulfilled per illusions that it made and keeps relative to criminal ceaseless natures, positive treatments, negative treatments, and identity treatments simultaneously. Relevant to that nature of psychopath that pretends not to realize exceptions and exception nature when they speak for things like order or justice and or for about the appearances of the law, of the appearances of justice. See, that had long ago, and it only been known. They switched what appearances meant to little tricks with, handing people a cup, then pretending to know them. Filled with, where and how. Investigators, individually grouped together. That is used remotely every country. They don't have an identity, which is also relevant because the reason they get away with it, the reason they are, is relevant to where and to how consciously. Little kids of overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and the three branches of government and all exception nature tied to them. Even in unrealized ways, like people tied to the databases. This is a breaching method that uses databases and how the identity unfolds, how identities of locations fold with a delayed response and filtered to mimic and fake realities, hyper theater with a fake theater. Like, for example, incapable of valuing properly what sequence or simultaneous nature is about. So where and how, so there's a quality of time treatments. They've been so increasingly to pretend other as they knew they would do. Same way it knew and knows it's keeping people in groups leveraged against every single person relevant to the shooting problems with like over probably around 40 shootings now in Hartford, Connecticut this year alone. And then with the mass shootings some mass shootings of individuals, by individuals and by groups relevant to where and how individual rights have never been defended and that have never been liberated from that identity theft, fraud, slander method. Increasingly, they have to lie about their own motivations and natures and interests and at all locations. Anyone speaking for the law and pretending it's be that Marbury versus Madison has been spoken for legitimately. They have the interbranch cases as actually recorded per actual means to discernment, rules of predicate acts methods in cases already, as rules already at crime scenes, as rules are already having the news media lie about the outcome of past cases, as rules already where with people uses of that with predicate acts in cases, predicate acts methods in cases, as the processes of interbranch locations. For example, the right not to be tortured, the right not to have fake evidence stacked in databases, the right not to have the significance and uses of it also used, demonstrated. Those parts of that relevant individually grouped together. For example, there are individuals with Hartford Hospital and with New Britain hot medical campuses and with Middletown medical campuses. They have roles with families personally and professionally that are in conjunctive with their crimes with their patients and criminals, including forensic locations, since they were kids, since before they were caught. Now, this is also right through where and how they make time treatments as psychopaths, pretending they're legitimately speaking for emotions or about the calm. Or, both ways. Now, how they got away with this is relevant to where and how sustained. Also, that phrase, though, the phrase divide and conquer. Dr. Shub and others with roles with various natures of courts, personally, criminally involved with foreign and domestic medical families and military families and judicial families and roles with databases and locations along roads and routes. Then further that was and is exploited at other locations peripheral to that. Now, see, uses of its identity to defend themselves and of its as it was is its identity being presented to the human fact sheet nature. There were uses of it instead changing what nature is demonstrating to us as science, where it does not bring theory under the guise of theory in the public sphere, in the furtherance of that consciously replacing what our founding parents through Marbury versus Madison and through the counter extortion they had to force of the other founders. And why? They wanted us to explain that rather than have that explained. For example, this is relevant to where and to how people pretend to believe in the need to test if people are doing their homework or not. That has increasingly relevant to that. For example, is where and how there is a criminally foreign influenced. There are criminally foreign influenced plural uses of the identity of America, where it is still being and having been applied by a program as a tool and a program since before it was named. The breaching method had crazy laws against every person individually grouped in together. And it had sustained that, knowing it's people are going to come out of it, but they're going to come out of it as forms of logic and counters still possessed slash hyper possessed. And how grouped, how individually grouped in together, species body. That's why that's relative to where and how it comes up. Colonization, and people fight about that, leaving out the breaching method from some ancient times. Then they have experts on things divided. Same people that pretend they have sensibilities, speaking about divide and conquer into nodes. This is relevant. These are names that are involved with the World Trade Center, leading up to the World Trade Center attack. And since people with various natures of courts, involved with a whole bunch of natures of drugs and medicines, crimes, sexual crimes, judicial crimes, as the people speak, as the only people allowed to speak formally about crimes, relevant to what I caught them doing with their kids, and since they were kids, caught done against them. Everyone forced to speak to others, where that is exploited. A whole bunch of people recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. In other words, roles with uses of corners of streets, roads and routes, and motivations regarding, every place next to every place, not by accident, per what is science is actually capable of discerning, which too is evidence where and how what is recorded simultaneously relevant to wire crime methods, whole wire crime methods the interbranch have. They have methods of pretending this is opinion too, consciously, as roles with the increasing value of switching names into Branch, Connecticut as criminal insidiousness. But relevant is where and how from off those locations, from off all locations, a hyper sophistication state. That which has that which is relevant to where and to how. Pseudo sophistication justifies, it got away with hiding itself, as is actually recorded. As the only, and where and how all exception nature, that appear to be a demonstration of other, are a demonstration of the same things too. You have to understand these other methods of predicate acts, delivery, and of criminal insidiousness delivery, and as also where and how they are as collusions, where and how they are actually, no one wants to be criminally foreign influence, and they don't even realize it. That's what they're doing when they're making the fact treatments, when they're making the name treatments, time treatments, when they speak for precedents or statutes. They're knowingly hiding means to discern that and how precedents and statutes were left as actually recorded, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought, exploited for a whole bunch of motivations discernible. And people having said that, defended their sensibilities, but left that out. There's other, in other words, people know, but not to extent, but people don't realize, because where the breaching method employed, what our founders communicated to us, having had to go like this through time, because they would have been sought out and hurt, and worse, because the breaching method against colonization's members individually grouped in together. So they punish each other relevant to things, and then they get them to stop. But they get other things to start. No. That not one modern country has an identity they could defend. and afford short words using revelations, which, which are the value of short words using truths that do not deny the slightest exception, the slightest finite detail, where and how convictions are made, where and how theory should and could be used to measure and solve. See, but offensively, all words, like theory, have been used criminally for and influenced. Tactically, delusions raw. And as collusions with only identities of experts on things like delusions. I didn't read this, but per the dictionary definition of delusion, our experts have, and to the simultaneously relevant to juxtaposed natures of distinct natures of organized crime associated with them and with their means actually to be able to discern that or not. In other words, there are physical delusions they have, our formal stewards, that are in collusion with the physical delusions of other natures of criminal insidiousness. And with a breaching method, nature of hypercriminal insidiousness, keeping that to outcome /S. It effectively kept and keeps locations like forensics locations, prisons, interbranch locations, self-valued roles with where and how they are an identities individually grouped in together, where and how they are psychopaths. For example, relevant to where and how. One of the ways they got away with it was by pretending that to be the appearance of justice, people should not yell. People should not yell to put you in jail. But where there are exceptions, where our volumes, they say, why didn't you say anything? Because how they communicate other than they say. And when they say switching things at locations, people associated with the interbranch and the other countries, where and how they are knave, suits and ties encounters, that had all this time to address what nuclear weapons were about, what wars were about, but they used it to hide how they were pseudo-integrity, relevant to that breaching method, relevant to how we really got into World War I. You don't leave out how roles with slavery and through the counters to it were roles with still. Our founders left us to communicate how North and South sickly distinctly were involved with slavery. Our founders could only counter-extort everyone and force them to an extent to fight as two criminal insidiousness natures of theaters. Victim slaves. That's why still rolls with slavery, North and South, while they were still fighting. That's why George Washington had to come to Wethersfield, Connecticut, right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War, to secure through counter-extortion means to win the last battle of the Revolutionary War. Means relevant to where and to how, since before Trinity College was Trinity College. It was George Washington College. It was a short horse ride from Wethersfield, which was probably just still named Hartford then. And slavery was left entrenched north and south in this place where he had to come to secure that counter-extortion, implied and communicated as other two, no, formally, informally, too, simultaneously. Because there are uses of that relevant by the people involved. There were all kinds of, next to that witch trials placed next to it, There's a witch trials place next to where George Washington had to come and use counter extortion to force people to help them win the last battle of the Revolutionary War. As a part with the theater narrative, where they were still in the phase of needing to hide their roles at the same time while fighting the war with their actual motivations. Because the breaching method laws were regarding everyone's motivations. Criminally foreign influence while simultaneously pretending other, as those laws forced. Since everyone was a list, at each age sickly distinctly. So recorded our sick abuses of children and of elderly homes at the same time. To address the sick abuses of the judicial branch members and of the executive branch people, service people, we have to address their roles differentially, criminally foreign influence with the locations, areas, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, insidiousness of people, the A through Z too. Because there are timed uses of everyone pretending other. One of the means to discern it is where and how they offensively prevent mandated law. One of the ways to discern it is where how a bunch of fakes, only capable of being through this, have been in backgrounds getting away with speaking fake conversations with me. All exceptions they used criminally too, because they're using exception nature other than it was and is actually manifest, which is relevant because too that's juxtaposed with more there relevant. Like the significance of that to all kinds of hurt. So forgiveness is not to give up against anything. Forgiveness is to let anyone use a quality of fact, should be nature. That's not going to leave out the breaching method and its roles with these styles of logic individually grouped in together. You guys can't defend yourselves. And without offensively self-valuing, roles with all kinds of there's only 3 branches of government, all exceptions that have possession of their name. So the box cannot be the box unless it is the circle for how more shapes is being made. Half of our identity, part of a semi-nature of our identity, is being made by what is not ourselves, while it is as ourselves. And part of how it demonstrates itself to itself, and so itself to us here, is by forcing away from here or forcing to accumulate here its identity of relationship to Earth's a special difference. See, but the breaching method made self-valued the only means to cause positive value nature progressions, acts, and natures, if there were going to be criminal insidiousness natures of them. If there were going to be appearances of justice that would self-value, breaching method employed things like poverty to maintain manifest contrast for pseudo-sophistication as the only sophistication to get away with that, to get away with interpretations of emotions that left and leave out the simultaneous, let alone the hyper-simultaneous. Boxing is great. Boxings to teach us things, prepare your souls. The species body longs, all shadow box, some rest. I tell it best, some sing. Shadow boxing. Loves. Shadow boxing longs. Sing songs. Gervonta Davis said in a boxing post, Gervonta Davis, I'm a fan of yours. But you said if anyone says they would fight you, to be careful. So all I'm saying, please give me a shot, Gervonta Davis. I'm a YouTube shadow boxer. I have a whole bunch of. I was one of the most active open class fighters in New England for like 5 years, and I was doing school full time, and I was doing things for myself for education for no credit, and so I was doing a lot. But then when we're speaking about when we're speaking what people do or don't do, we're not speaking about the simultaneous properly. In other words, we're using how it is about the simultaneous. See, we cannot leave out the value of this. Per the rules, with also recorded relevant uses of black and white leaders per themselves, black and KKK, not white, rather, per them. Rules with having made fake exceptions to pretend to know me that they created. Then they pretend to know me. Then they have rules with behavior racketeering. They have rules with sequence shifts, federal rules of evidence as crimes with judges, prosecutors, their family members, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, remote uses of names next to schools, next to everyone, keep everyone equality of fact, keeping yourself valued, leaving out sequence shifts, final act progressive names, leaving out details like what they heard right before they saw someone's face, that they don't know that. Years later, they'll say they know them. These are associated with crime methods that are manifest because of how, as an identity of volume /S, humanity is being exploited. So, vaccines, just things. Let's not forget. So the value, someone please tell the television judges and the social media people. I called the school relevant as rules with all kinds of federal crimes with criminal exceptions where they have readings of all kinds of criminally foreign influence readings of statutes to cover up what they were doing in cases and at all kinds of locations. Everything associated with that, formulating things up, even at crime scenes. Relevant, people know that they're leaving out details and things like that. They don't understand the significance of it. They don't understand the significance of people saying they have faith. And there's only three branches of government and the identity that speak for the law, the nature of the law. If you know in the back of your mind, criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments and of negative treatments were simultaneously in collusion against the identities of New York City, individually grouped and together. And what cause and maintains use of that singular needs people to self-value the contrast associated with that, where with modern cities, everywhere they are. Don't forget, simultaneously relevant is where and how sickly, distinctly before cars, the suburbs were already designed to cause negative value nature progressions, acts and natures, and that had already been sustained effectively to maintain roles with criminal insidiousness natures of positive and of negative treatments. Positive treatments like roles with mass farming and Yukon with this, where how they have roles with the law, with other campuses that appear to be separate, where and how All identity ground locations, identities were are being and haven't been applied in ways they don't want. But it involves ways they want because everyone's been using of criminal insidious natures of theater um, takes on appearances of justice or appearances of credibility, where how this breaching method knew they would do that. This breaching method knew people would climb out of being exploited per how being grouped, per how being individual alone, per how being humanity with all formal and informal locations, voices, and natures in collusion, some ways, relevant to where and to how every single individual wanted to, but didn't do what they wanted, what they naturally, why nature is showing us to do. Use where and how we have black pupils and white survived, and knowledge that a breaching method had been sustained against Native Americans and against the colonists and everyone against each other, even Native Americans against Native Americans. And then our founders had to hide their roles and with their actual motivations coming to revolution, which was against the methods and laws of the slavery system as colonization itself through different countries, where and how we never addressed that breaching method that had real or made up. The witch trials, then and now, sickly applied. We have psychopaths only capable of speaking for the relevance and the relativity and or for the relativity of the witch trials placed right next to where George Washington had to come counter extort that left with slavery here in Wethersfield, Connecticut, north, right between New York and Boston. New York had sick slavery too, sickly, and the north had it sickly distinctly from the south. And all the part locations were sickly distinctly. Consciously, the syntactic where it's to maintain it blamed on other things, other selves, where this was designed to maintain syntactical possessions over every individual grouped in together over the nervous system of everyone, let alone the sensibilities of Jane Austen's phrase. They even have where the Mark Twain house is and the Harriet Beecher's house, the Stowe house is. They have recorded relevant criminally foreign influenced uses of them and of the arts, relevant, and with the FBI, and with the lawyer of former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influence and Corrupt Organization Act, a lawyer himself, but his lawyer, Robert Chevalier, involved with people through time, on off his, where his, I don't know if it's still there, in Hartford, not far from the state capitol, and even closer to between that is the Harry Beecher Stowe house and the Mark Twain house there together. A whole bunch of people tied to John Mayano is involved with sequence shifts and federal evidences crimes in a whole bunch of different cases where and how they have crime methods where they speak and act and do things at locations so they could use time at interbranch locations criminally foreign influenced. And so they could cover that up with that having been done. And at the exceptions tied to them. People with Middletown, whole bunch of ways through time with the forensics locations, have roles criminally foreign influence uses of names and sensibilities of people tied to the corners of the streets at Fairlane and Carriage Hill Drive and at Fairlane and Griswold Street has something to do with the Joshua Stryker and the Joshua Julian, also with police chiefs through time. 1 years ago, and then one through years, a police chief Cintron. I don't know the new police chief, but there are relevant wire crimes and federal evidences crimes through administrations that are roles also with connected a whole bunch of juxtaposed natures of organized crime by strangers that made confessions to me tied to the people that are connected to the only three branches of government. So I got to discern, also how they cover up, where and how they state psychopath names, preventing, in other words, New York City is a trap, and cities throughout the world are. And it comes conjunctive with people pretending, getting away with it because they're pretending others are making opinions rather than allowing them to have their words not changed relative to any of the countless evidences of this. So I'm not a police force, I'm not a criminal. The news is also, told to pretend it's personal after they attach us to fake words. Because the locations are used to keep each identity of industry, identity of the ground location, too, simultaneously, distinctly, not distinctly, simultaneously, more and more ways kept needing to hide finite, active, progressive lies and illusions by speaking them, by hiding how other people speak them, by taking out of context people's counters to this, by speaking lies or illusions. See, that's invisible but still discernible, and that's not what can be used to discern where and how the nature and method of criminal insidiousness relevant has to be treated. So we have to have mandated law followed. The FBI and Weathersfield Police and state police, and with one's family's interstates, people retired and standing on off the campus, inter campuses and intra campuses. They have roles with wire crimes with the Connecticut news locations and locations next to it, inter campuses, progressive roles with more illusion stacking and sense and sensibility hostage stacking, per fact, cheaply nature oriented, racketeering worse than war crimes. But we're going to call that racketeering because former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influence to Corrupt Organization Act, and his defendants, three co-defendants of his in a 2006 district court case, and their family members were involved with people stacking predicate acts on and off campuses I went to, stacking roles with in criminal insidiousness, natures of confessions, and of statements to me relevant, and of pretending passions and emotions and motivations. Where and how relevant is where and how people say and do whatever at locations to keep things going before interbranch locations that haven't had collusions, where those locations are being and haven't been used to stack fake recorded reality, to totally replace what's actually recorded and totally add additional fake realities. That's how sick it's been. They've been getting away with it because they're hiding behind how they have a whole bunch of different countries with the campuses. They have these crime methods of distinct natures. And so subject treatments, they have roles with distinct natures of organized crime as the police forms, allowed to be roles with this. Originally still, but per a method relevant that exploits this. We have to address where and how they cannot take what actually came first to be discerned, where simultaneously this would be a debate, what they would call debate. See, what you guys have heard as debate has been criminally foreign influence, qualities of fact, human nature, as psychopaths. Psychopathic takes on justice and evidential justifications of it, evidential treatments. In other words, spoke for and speak for the people of New York City and those people stacking, especially where and how if you're poor and people stack vertically, horizontally, all except nature, all those things were employed for other, because those are natural employments. Nature's going to demonstrate what the heck is that. Only a psychopath with delusions could pretend that science spoke for the relativity of passions and emotions relevant to it. See, passions and emotions are about the simultaneous / hyper simultaneous. And that being functional is that by how being hyper invisible, but still discernible distinctly from how invisible, but still discernible, and such as English and the other sciences were revealed to teach, but see through breach, free speech, mandated laws being prevented. The Weathersfield police have wire crime rules. They're also pretending it's personal. See, people they have crime methods where they have theories mixed with delusions, where the police forms say, "Oh, this person says the police are corrupt, they have a mental illness," or they discredit people. They have the social media with retired and standing into branch, discrediting legitimate information, criminally foreign influence, it being relevant to where and to how really the war is unfolded, originally and still. You don't bring up World War One without bringing up that breaching method left within slavery roles north and south. Fake counters to it, sickly distinctly north and south, because they're only capable of it. Because they were already been sustained roles with logic, same way sickly distinctly from the Native Americans. They have the actual history, the actual method by the human science, replaced with short words and revelations, and what the value of understanding what brought them to being sequentially first as actually was true. Through physical delusions, identity delusions, and nature delusions, inherent active and progressive, to the summary opinions and convictions and names of the people involved with this. And they're never pretend it's personal. I asked you to, I called the campus, for example, when I was since proven principal child abuser, more involved then and now, not just with upskirt pictures, also how they have women interbranch self-value roles with that is relevant to where and to how they've been using the identities, rights to lie, where and how they don't have the right to lie, but they do it anyway. And that's relevant where and how precedents and statutes readings are criminally foreign influence, only capable of being as relevant collusions at crime scenes like the World Trade Center. These are names involved with the World Trade Center, the same ones involved with preventing me from telling one sentence. I didn't even get to it. First, I was told, I told someone brought up the campus to me. And then I was told to put on hold. And then all these confessions were made on the answering machine and statements that were untrue by a since proven principal child abuser, and demonstrations which communicated even more of roles with this and names brought into it. Now, these are interbranch switching and forging names. It's not just the Weathersfield police chief. These are also names involved with various natures of federal criminals since before that was proven, and then as their roles as defendants with former director Robert Luskin. Thaddeus Grabowski is one of the ones on off Fox Connecticut News with a Domain family and with a Mendez family having attached me to faked conversations, faked knowing them through time. And they made fake exceptions. Probably one's totally made up. In other words, the only way I know them was trying to, with them, they couldn't go back and be honest because they also have roles with names on and off the campuses I went to, even from the youngest ages, where they made recorded criminally foreign influence uses of those people, like a Ray Reynolds involved with identity theft, fraud, slanderous natures of things, in, uh, initiated by people intercampuses, involved with intra and intra campuses. You know, also also relevant motivations, racketeering we'll call it, but it's worse than war crimes. It's worse than war crimes relevant to where and to how. All this time went by, and you guys left out the breaching method that you also have replaced that our founders left us to communicate about. You know, instead you have those insidiousness natures of words they were forced to entertain and to speak, to screen, so to save the potential of themselves and ourselves one day to have free speech and not other pretended for the breaching screen to measure and maintain its way while through us, everyone through other interests, motivation, nature, needs, interests, apparent, but time kept needing to have the same sequence shit for it. Roles with uses of styles of logic left and leaving out exceptions. So has most of the time you need people to stay calm. They're writing fake things in databases. They're you pulling off tricks that were left inseparable from where and how what's really involved with all the topics treatments, all the subjects treatments in the news. See, this volume science method, as any individual speaking has to focus on certain aspects of things, leaving out other things. But this method leaves out, unlike you've heard all methods, we don't leave out the smallest finite detail exception. The value of the significance of it. Roxanne, thank you. I teach you things belong. Mother,